There's a lot going on right now in the world of aRPGs. As covered in a recent video, we've got much to look forward to this year, with all the various updates and expansions coming for the current big names in the genre. I mean, frankly, I expect I'll be spending a ton of time this year playing PoE 2, checking out the next to last Epoch season, and I'm sure I'll even give Diablo 4 the time of day with a brief revisit at some point. One of these seasons will be interesting enough anyways. But on top of all that, we're also getting a few new aRPGs, like brand new games in 2025. And there's one in particular that has caught my attention, and that is Titan Quest 2. This game simultaneously looks new and fresh while also having a touch of old school nostalgia that I'm really appreciating. While I'm not so sure if its focus on exploration, the lack of procedural content, and just an overall slower pacing to combat, if that is just going to be too much to bear for the sensibilities of today's aRPG fans, where everything is like zoom going at 1,000 miles an hour, exploding screens. That's not what's happening in this game. And personally, it is precisely these elements that actually have me interesting. Like, for an old ass gamer like myself, relatively old in the gaming sphere, I think this looks great. Combat does seem to be a little lacking, if we're being perfectly honest, but hopefully they're gonna flesh it out and it will at least feel good enough to play, because I am loving everything else that I'm seeing about this game. Now, the game is evidently planning to enter Steam Early Access sometime relatively soon in the coming months. So today what I wanted to do is go over everything we know about Titan Quest 2 so far, which actually is quite a lot. Let's start off with one of the biggest, most obvious standouts setting this game apart, and that is its world. So rather than taking place in like the traditional grim, dark, medieval inspired fantasy of most aRPGs, Titan Quest is set in a world inspired by the tales of classic ancient Greek mythology. The basic premise and starting of the game is you're waking up on this strange shore, crawling with monsters all around you, having just narrowly escaped the wrath of a god, and tasked with seeking out the goddess of fate and learning how to defeat the grand boss Nemesis. And thus begins your adventure, moving through picturesque beaches, haunted caverns, serene temples, and the untamed wilderness, while at the same time battling back creatures from Greek myth, including Ichthyans, centaurs, satyrs, harpies, sirens, griffins, and plenty more, as well as the usual diverse cast of traditional RPG creatures like spiders and skeletons. Now, the setting of this game alone I find appealing, and just like a nice change of pace for the genre. I also really appreciate that the game's got a bit more of a pop of color than what we're used to seeing in aRPGs. And another big selling point for me is the game's non-procedural, handcrafted world with an emphasis on open exploration and uncovering hidden secrets. So structurally, this is going to be an act-based open world game, with each act consisting of this one rather large, seamlessly explorable space, rather and compared to the mostly linear instanced areas that you get in aRPGs like Path of Exile or Last Epoch, where in those games you're moving through a zone, loading into the next one at a particular point, and then going from one zone to another until you eventually reach the end of the act. Instead, here in Titan Quest 2, every act has you moving through this one large explorable space with some spokes that go off on the side into some instance areas as well. It's also, once again, entirely handcrafted, every location built intentionally by the developer, rather than procedurally generated levels where different rooms or area types are essentially stitched together. A big part of the reason for them doing fully handcrafted without the procedural elements is they're having a big focus on having a lot of layers to the world with loads of secrets and hidden areas to find. So the game blends both open roaming spaces with structured points of interest. In the roaming areas, these are going to be tailored towards freedom of exploration, environmental interaction, verticality, and uncovering those secrets. So there's going to be multiple levels that you can freely traverse between in these spaces, scaling up the sides of buildings and mountains, climbing ladders, leaping over chasms, jumping from one ledge to another, all of this possible while exploring the various locations, from deep canyons to coastal cliffs along pristine beaches to expansive Greek farmlands. Then moving through each act, you're going to come across a lot of points of interest, of course. These will include things like a griffin's nest atop a mountain, stately temples, layers of mythological beast, and portals to other divine god dimensions. Some of these are going to be found easily, located along the regular beaten path, while others will be more secluded or just even outright hidden. So you might be searching through a room, picking up loot, and then you happen to notice it's possible to interact with this lever, which reveals a secret entrance. Or maybe you discover a dead end in a dungeon with a puzzle to solve. Doing so properly opens up a new way forward. And these harder to discover discover locations will also tend to hide some deadlier bosses and more valuable rewards. The game's gonna have a variety of different quest types. There's first Fated Quest, that's the name for their mainline story chain, taking you through the main narrative arc towards the final boss encounter. These will tend to feature some bigger story moments, of course, but also large boss fights, dramatic escapes, tricky encounters, and some one-of-a-kind events unique to the main storyline. There are world quests discovered both through exploration as well as talking to NPCs. Now, these can take a lot of different forms, either focusing on a particular mechanic, a mini-boss, character, plot twist, piece of mythology, or some central conflict in the current chapter that you're in. These are also designed to be exploration-friendly as well, meaning that if you happen to come across a cave full of prisoners before speaking with the official quest giver, if you free them, it's going to just complete the quest and reward you automatically, rather than having to go pick up the quest and then come back to the area that you've already discovered. And then further, there are what are called exploration events. These are smaller encounters that are not tracked on your quest log or even marked on the map. So as you're exploring, you might just come across things like a talking jar, a statue surrounded by offering bowls that you can interact with, or an encounter with this lizardman commander. And the entire point of these is they're designed to be found and completed naturally as you move through the world, so long as you're paying attention and not just blitzing through everything. As for the game's combat, the developer has described their core design pillars and philosophy as follows. They refer to Titan Quest II as a classic style top-down aRPG with a modern yet traditional take on combat. Now, as you can probably see by looking at the gameplay here, combat doesn't look particularly flashy or impactful or nearly as fast-paced when compared to many contemporary aRPGs. That is by design. We'll have to see if it pays off for them, and most importantly to me, as long as it's fun to play. It doesn't have to be the most flashy, it doesn't need to be fully screen clearing. If it feels good to engage with enemies, that's all I really care about, and we'll only know that once we get the chance to play it. The game's going to feature a wide variety of enemy types, including many different monster factions, roles, and power levels. So you'll of course have stronger foes with hard-hitting abilities that you need to dodge or counter, weaker enemies that are dangerous in numbers but can be quickly eliminated. There will be swarmers, casters, tanks, rangers, supports, zone control, so on, each with many different abilities that potentially synergize together. Boss fights are also said to be a core part of the Titan Quest DNA. We can expect a large variety of abilities from these boss encounters with clear sequences that you will be rewarded for learning and executing on properly. In terms of active abilities, well, these are actually determined by whatever combination of two masteries you pick from, and the mastery system played a big role in the original Titan Quest, and it's making its way back here. So we're gonna have a pool of up to 8 from these, although we're starting with just 3 in the early access release. You're gonna be able to equip a large number of abilities at the same time and then customize them using modifiers to personalize your build. The masteries also offer separate passive abilities that drive much of your power scaling, with feats from passive skills adding further bonuses. Leveling up rewards you with points to get new active skills, passive skills, and attributes. Each main attribute is further connected to secondary attributes that determine the kind of gear you can wear and how your damage scales, and then at certain thresholds they're going to unlock further skill modifiers on top of that. Now, if you happen to die in combat, the enemies who killed you and any nearby will respawn at full power. You respawn at the nearest respawn hub, and then from there you can either take one of the game's many teleporters to some area of the world that you've uncovered, or they actually have this on-death portal which lets you get right back to where you died, fighting once again the enemies who killed you. And you know, I'll just say it once more here in the combat section, it definitely does not look nearly as flashy or impactful as PoE 2 or D4. I still think it looks like it could be fun. There is a simplicity here that I actually appreciate. Again, so long as the engagements are diverse and challenging enough, it could definitely be entertaining. We'll just have to see once we get our hands on it. All right, so a little more detail about the masteries. As mentioned, your skills are determined by which masteries you select. As there are no classes, it's your chosen combo of 2 selected out of the total number of masteries that determine your potential playstyle. So in this initial early access release, we will have access to the Earth, Storm, and Warfare masteries, with eventually 8 total coming. So those are 3 of the upcoming 8. And then we'll pick the combo that we want. This is going to happen early in the campaign, so we can get to tinkering with all the different possible synergies and combinations early on in our playthrough. In total, we can equip a maximum of 10 skills onto our ability bar, plus a basic attack, and this will offer a range of potential playstyles, pretty much what you expect. But here's some further details on each of the current masteries, what they entail. So with Earth, this combines fire and earthen magic. Many of its abilities and modifiers revolve around setting the battlefield ablaze, causing enemies to burn over time, or controlling the earth by hurling rocks, cleaving the ground, ground and causing massive earthquakes. So an example of one skill, there's Fissure. This is a line AoE skill where you break the ground open in front of you, dealing strike damage. And then with a lava fissure modifier, it'll make it so that that fissure fills with lava, adding damage over time. But then you can further add additional fissure modifiers that will reduce the damage of a single one of them, but spawn multiple fissures covering a larger area. The Storm Mastery is all about crowd control and area of effects abilities, utilizing ice to chill or freeze and lightning to shock and electrocute. One skill example is Cyclone. This is a static circular AoE where you create a whirling storm dealing cold damage. Adding the Blizzard modifier will make it deal more damage. Chilling and freezing has a chance to be applied with that. Or you can add the Personal Storm modifier, which puts a smaller version of Cyclone actually physically around your character, following you, allowing you to either stack the cyclones or hit more than one enemy at once while up close. And then finally, the Warfare Mastery. This features many different attacks and abilities that enhance all the different types of weapons in the game, from melee to ranged, with support abilities that help in closing the gap, stunning enemies with powerful stomps or leaping into battle. So one example here is the Leap ability, a versatile mobile skill allowing you to jump into combat or get out of trouble, dealing some damage where you land. The Cooldown Charge mod allows you to cast Leap twice in a row at the cost of a longer cooldown, where Seismic Leap increases your damage on landing while also dealing damage at your launch position. And once again, there's going to be a total of 8 masteries. We pick 2 and then we mix and match the different abilities within each of those masteries, as well as different modifiers that can be applied from one mastery to another, stacking on top of each other, mixing and matching however we please. Now, as for items, it's of course going to be a big part of this game. This is a loot-driven aRPG. Titan Quest II they define as a classic-style aRPG with looting and character scaling via items being at the heart of the game. So different locations, different areas are going to have an assigned level to them. This level scales enemy stats within them as well as that of the items dropped, so progressing further in the game or raising the difficulty of an area, which you're able to do directly via game modifiers. Both of those directly yield higher level and better loot. Now, initially, the loot drops are going to include one-handed weapons of swords, spears, and daggers, two-handed weapons, axes, bows, and staves. There will be offhand shields, your armor slots of helm, shoulder cap, bracer, leggings, and chest piece, jewelry with 2 rings and an amulet, and then there will be potions for healing and energy restoration. So weapons and armor in the game actually come in 6 broad categories, which can be combined with masteries to create a variety of different styles. These styles are further determined by attributes. There are going to be 3 offensive character attributes, a supporting defensive attribute, and then 3 secondary attributes. So these are Might, which is good for powerful aggressive styles using heavy armor and weapons. This unlocks damage-related modifiers. Knowledge is more caster-focused, unlocking and scale utility skill modifiers. Agility, all about speed and nimble, sort of the rogue archer. This unlocks speed-related skill modifiers. And then there's Vigor, which increases health and tenacity as well as overall capacity. And then finally, the 3 secondary ones of Resolve, Cunning, and Fitness, which combines multiple into one. So Resolve is fueled by Might, Knowledge, and Vigor, Cunning by Knowledge, Agility, and Vigor, and Fitness by Agility, Might, and Vigor. So attributes and their secondaries create this flexible system that allows you to, say for example, split your attribute points across 2 different offensive attributes, focusing on the damage types they both contribute to, and enabling gear and unlocks for both of them as well. So rather than say focusing just on Might or just on Knowledge, you can split them evenly using those secondary ones. Again, that's that flexibility, basically hybrid system is what this allows you to build your characters around. And they will be fully incentivizing tinkering around with builds and playstyles, as you can respec pretty freely at any time to try different setups as well. The game also has traditional RPG rarities and affixes for items and gear, so the weapon style determines its base stats as well as properties, but then the number of affixes will differ depending on the rarity. So common items will only have their basic properties. Magic gives you 1 to 2 affixes, rare 3 to 4, infrequent gives you 2 to 4 affixes, as well as an additional special inherent property, and then there will be unique items with completely custom properties. These are gear pieces that are very strong and usually somewhat build defining. I also wanted to touch on their plans for monetization beyond the base box price. There are none. Straightforward. You're going to buy the game, no microtransactions, no loot boxes, no season passes, no nothing. I call it old school monetization, but it's just like monetization the way I wish all games were. I know it doesn't work like that. And they're just everyone's got to make more money than this feasible. All right, so when is this game going to be playable? Well, no exact date has been set, but apparently they recently said in an interview that they will be planning to launch into Steam Early Access relatively soon in these coming months. Now, for the initial iteration, for the Early Access launch, day one, what can we expect? Well, they're going to have the first 2 chapters of the campaign, which they say will include roughly 12 hours of content from start to finish. We'll have those 3 masteries to choose from, as we covered. Those are Warfare, Storm, and Earth. The level cap for a characters will be 20, and then after playing through the content that's available, any further replayability is coming through this ritual system, which lets you ramp up the difficulty of different areas, increasing the challenge, but also yielding better rewards, better loot drops, higher level stuff for you to make your build more powerful. And then over the course of Early Access, which they've estimated to be about 12 months, they will be adding the additional chapters, going from 2 to the grand total of 6. With that, there will of course be more open zones, more enemies, more loot, more bosses, and more story. They're adding a crafting system for making and tinkering our own gear. We will be going from the base 3 to up to 8 masteries in total. The level cap will increase. They're going to be adding co-op, and then beyond the rituals, evidently the game is going to be getting a new game plus as well, letting you play through all of the chapters at a ramped up difficulty across the board. And they're going to be adding the monster specific loot. So this is basically thematically making sense. So for example, if you see an Ichthian soldier carrying a 2-handed mace and you kill them, they will drop a 2-handed mace. Now, you don't know how strong it's going to be, but you're going to get the drop that you see the NPC wielding. This was like one of the big standout features of the original game, and they have promised it's going to be making its return here in Titan Quest 2, at least some variation of it. So that pretty much does it for what we know about this game so far. And like I said at the top, I'm really looking forward to this. Like, I think a lot about it is looking great. I love the setting. I love the general premise of the game. I do enjoy the slower pacing across the board. I would say probably my biggest early concern right here just comes with the amount of content that has been stated they will be launching into Early Access with. The devs themselves has said the 12 hours of playthrough is like completionist style. So that's you like going around exploring every nook and cranny, discovering every secret, and defeating every enemy. I really hope that means without whatever repeatable content they're offering, like say via that ritual system to bump up the difficulty of the different areas, get better loot, and farm higher, harder level enemies. But even still, from what has been said publicly, it does not sound like they have any plans to launch with any like grindable, infinitely replayable end game sort of system. Maybe that's something that they're still keeping under wraps. If they do truly launch this aRPG in 2025 with 12 hours of content into Early Access, I think that alone, knowing fans of this genre, is going to get the game a lot of downvotes. You know what I mean? Like, I think it could get a lot of negative reviews if people are just like buying this game for however much it's going to be, let's say $30 to $40. That's like the ballpark I would guess from the developer and the publisher and the kind of game they're making. But if they launch an aRPG that's only 12 hours of content and there's nothing for players to do to keep on going, I do think that could really, really hurt the game's initial reception. That's also coming from someone who's like, I am okay with games not lasting forever, but this is a genre where a lot of the player base expects and wants these games to last forever. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they have something like after you play through the 12 hours of those first two acts, right? I hope there's something beyond the 12 hours, because if not, I really do worry for the reception that this game is going to receive. Outside of that, like if the game is really expansive, once it's got all of the chapters in, and let's say the total gameplay time is like 50 or 60 hours, and then they also have some variation of endgame, like I said, I'm okay with not every game. I'm okay with a game just being 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 hours, whatever. I'm okay with games just being that, and then I'm done and I enjoyed it and great. It's just the ARPG portion of the gaming player base. They really expect and they really want a lot more, and I just hope they have something to offer. If they don't, I'm still going to be okay with it, and I'm still looking forward to playing it regardless. But I just want to throw that initial like hesitancy and concern out there that I'm a little worried for the early access release of an ARPG with only 12 hours potentially of content. We will see. Again, there's still a lot of unknown. There might be stuff in there that we just don't know about yet, or that I happen to miss, right? Either way, as a baseline, the world, the open exploration focus, the handcrafted nature, all of the secrets, the slower pacing, the setting, the enemy types, there's everything I've seen about this game. I'm like, it's giving me flashbacks. It's like an old school vibe. It's giving me nostalgia while also still being like modern day looking, despite not being as flashy or impactful as again, like D3 or PoE2. All of these things can coexist, right? right? All of these things could coexist. And I'm looking forward to this aRPG, even if it's not going to be the same sort of thing as what PoE 2 is doing. But yeah, something else to play, something else I'm looking forward to. That is going to do it for today. Our look at Titan Quest 2. I will keep you up to date as we learn more. And eventually, if I get the chance to play it, I'll let you know my thoughts and impressions then as well. But that's it for today. Thank you as always for watching. I hope you all enjoy. See you next time.